Hey, what up, YouTube? Just want to make this video today to essentially go over what is going on with the PAC and Mountain West, without necessarily getting into all the lawsuits and everything, particular wording, this, that, the other, yada, yada, yada. One word I will bring up is duress, but that'll be a little bit later. But I wanted to get into everything with this movement between the Mountain West, the PAC, um, and kind of how we even got here, why it's going the way it's going, um, and in all honesty, the pettiness of it all. And when I say pettiness, I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be honest right now, right? I'm an NIU alum, so if anything, that should kind of tell you, okay, where my allegiance is lying. But even besides that, just the pettiness of the situation before NIU was on any sort of radar or even a part of any of this conference realignment stuff before we ended up in the Mountain West, any of that, it was just like, this is petty. It was like, what is going on with the college football that I used to love, right? It's just like why? Um, you have to understand realignment. A lot of this stuff has been going on for a long time, but the first real shift goes back to what you're looking at right now. It goes back to the Big East Conference. I remember growing up in those early 2000s. I was born in 92, so I just dated myself a bit, but I remember growing up in those early 2000s. Uh, uh, and that's when I really started paying attention to things like, sports, football, this, that, the other, right? And you had the Big East, right? Growing up, I was a huge Miami fan, and I would say, besides Miami, um, Virginia Tech fan. So you had Miami, you had Virginia Tech. Miami, Virginia Tech. Um, Following those two and then understanding that what went down here, I don't want to say, oh, it created a ripple effect through time and space, and this is the reason why things are the way they are now. Um, but in a sense, it is. Um, you have lawsuits, you have this, you have that. If you've been looking at the words on the screen on this Wikipedia page, right, when the ACC was looking to expand, right, the three target schools or rumored target schools were Miami, Boston College, and Syracuse. Now, like I said, up to that point, the Big East, right, that's all I cared about. I didn't really, and I'm from Chicago, and I could care less about, Miami, I mean, about Ohio State and Michigan and U of I and stuff like that. Like, this is what was exciting to me, was Miami, Virginia Tech, right? That's who I cared about. But I didn't know any of this conference realignment stuff or any of that. This is me now as an adult looking at this. But it started right here. The ACC looking to expand. I want to say it says that they were at 9 schools, looking to go to 12 schools. The target schools were those Big East schools, right? Those Big East schools met with the ACC, and right. So then you had lawsuits that happened. Um, the Big East versus, I want to say, the ACC, and then there was the Big East versus, I think it says Miami and Boston College in particular. You're conspiring behind our back, and you're making this move. You weren't communicating right. You were doing this, and it would weaken the conference, right? And you got to think, all of this was going down and going on before we had these super huge media rights deals that we really have today, right? Like I said, these are the early 2000s. And I'm not saying that media rights deals didn't exist, but the super huge ones, the money we see getting thrown around right now, is not that money back then. I can't even say that, this is an inflation thing, right? You could attempt to try to be like, let's account for inflation, but I think the money you see getting thrown around right now in these payouts you see going to these schools, that's not just inflation. We're talking about like exponential growth, just about. Like it's a drastic difference um, in these payouts. So long story short, like this is our first, at least in my eyes, that first real example. Now, realignment, mergers, things like that have been happening a long time, a very long time, right? You know, within my lifetime, I've essentially seen the birth of a conference. Um, I feel like I've seen the death of a conference, right? You know, we saw the AAC essentially be created, which was really just kind of like a split off of the Big East, right? Um, and when I say the death of a conference, I don't literally mean the death of a conference, but I remember growing up and I remember there being the WAC, the Western Athletic Conference, and that being an FBS football conference, and then it wasn't there anymore, and I was like, what happened? Well, maybe I did not say what happened, right? I wasn't looking this stuff up. Technology wasn't the way it is now, right? You know, we didn't have smartphones and, right, I can just go hop on the internet and yada, yada, yada. I have what I got now. I'm looking at essentially something back here that affects the world today. Right? I'm looking at something back here that affects the world today. I have the Big East doing this. Now, the Big East, like I said, we fast forward, we end up having American Athletic Conference, and if you know anything about the Big East and also ESPN, there was the whole big thing with, you know, the Big East. You had a bunch of football schools, but then if you also knew the Big East, you had also a bunch of non-football schools. So there was just a lot going on with the Big East, right? You just had a lot of schools that were that primary focus was basketball, right? And then you have schools that were clearly football. And there was turmoil between them. I mean, if you actually look at the Big East today, for the most part, it is made up of mostly those original Catholic basketball programs. Those schools don't have football teams. Like that, football is not their thing. Basketball is their thing. And like I said, from there, those Catholic schools took the Big East name, right? I want to say this all went through the court system, yada yada yada. So they had the name, and then the American Conference, which was, I want to say, the football schools or the football teams that were left ended up essentially voting on this name, the American, the AAC. Here's where everything gets super complicated, right? I'm gonna try to speed through this. I don't want to have this be the majority of the whole video, but I then have the uh what's the best way to say this? You then have years, right? Because this is Wikipedia, and there's a whole timeline, purely realignment and reorganization. You see here on the left, right? We're adding Wichita State, the departure of UConn, added stability, the Big 12 raid, subsequent moves, expansion in men's, right? But this is purely about the AAC, right? This other one, here's the Big East. This was the Big East. Well, actually, no. This whole page is about, I want to say, '05 conference realignment. So there's a whole bunch of different things on here. But this is what happened with the Big East. This is specifically the AAC, so this is the reason why that timeline starts when it starts. It doesn't necessarily go back further. But what you see happen, or has been happening essentially with the American, is even going back to the Big East, they've been just getting picked off, right? We know we saw Big East schools end up with the ACC. And then eventually the Big East is gone, and then now it's technically, well, no, we saw Big East schools end up with the ACC. Schools that were left, right, you end up having Rutgers go to the Big Ten, Louisville join the ACC. I want to say West Virginia, if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure West Virginia was originally with the Big East, and then they end up in the Big 12. Um, right? Like you just like these schools. There was movement. There was movement going on. There was movement going on. You have this whole thing, right? This article right here, the Big 12 raid and subsequent invitations to the conference, right? So, right, this is more. This is actually newer. So I actually probably needed a link specifically talking about the Big East. Matter of fact, let's just open this real quick. Let's look at history. Football expansion, conference split. Right, I want to really kind of find a timeline. But yeah, you know, you had Rutgers, West Virginia, Virginia Tech, Temple, right? You had a lot of schools, right? Came, gone, came, gone. The AAC, we've been watching for years now. If you pay any sort of attention, and maybe you don't because you're just like, whatever. You've been watching the AAC essentially get picked apart. And then what they then do, they then pick apart Conference USA. And it's crazy. And it's like, does anybody pay attention to this? Like, the AAC, which, in a sense, you could almost say the Big East and then AAC, are they just the best, the overall best non-power conference? Or were they the best group of five conference? Because when you think about it, they just forever keep getting picked apart. Let's just think about it. Let's just call a spade a spade. Conferences keep going back to them and pulling schools. They keep going back, pulling schools. Right? You look at the Big 12, they brought in Houston, Cincinnati, UCF from who? The AAC. The Big East literally torn apart. Right? You had Big 12, you had Big 10, you had ACC. I'm trying to think. I don't think, not that I can think of at the moment, were there any any of these Big East schools that ended up in the SEC? I'm looking. I don't really think I see any right now. I don't believe there are any. Um, Cincinnati, DePaul, Louisville. Right? I don't think I see any schools like that. Um, right. Let's look at previous members. Right. We got Boston College, Miami, VT, West Virginia. Right. We had Rutgers. Right. Yeah. So none of these schools ended up essentially joining the SEC, but you had three power conferences essentially come in here and start picking the Big East apart. And I remember before the Big East fell apart, there was the whole thing where Boise State was actually potentially going to join the Big East. I remember that, right? I remember that, and I wonder if I control F and type in Boise, right? So at one point, I mean, you almost had a real interesting rebuild, right? So the following is a list of institutions which plan to join the Big East Conference but later reneged. The Big East invited 10 schools, 5 full-time members, so Houston, TCU, SMU, Memphis, and Central Florida, and 5 as football-only members. So if people are like, what's this whole football-only thing? When did people start doing that? You got to understand the armed forces schools, right? A lot of them been doing football only. I think Air Force might be the only one that's I think the Air Force is a full. I'm pretty sure Air Force is a full member of the Mountain West, but Army and Navy are, I believe, especially Army. I know Army for sure. They aren't full members of the AAC. They're football only for the most part. But the invite you had for football only: Air Force, Navy, Boise State, BYU, and San Diego State. To further stabilize the conference, members unanimously agreed to double the exit fee from $5 million to $10 million, contingent on anyone accepted invitation. Of the schools, all 4 invited to full membership accepted, as well as football only Boise State, Navy, and San Diego State. BYU and the Big East weren't able to come to terms. The conference insisted that BYU relinquish its TV rights for its home games as a condition of membership, and BYU was unwilling to do so. So we almost were in a world where we almost had a nice little chunk of schools, like I said, San Diego State, Boise State, BYU, and even Air Force ending up members in the Big East, or potentially what could have turned into the AAC. We see that did not continue to go down the way it was going to go down. So now we're going from there. We have, like I said, I'm already 15 minutes in, but like I said, the key thing I wanted to point out was when you had everything going on with the Big East, that wasn't the end of it for the American. Because then you had just more changes, right? You had more changes, right? They added Wichita State basketball, essentially, but then you lost UConn. Huge hit when you think about it. Huge hit. You lose UConn. I want to say they were looking to, make some moves here, right? They're adding schools left and right. And then here comes the Big 12. So Big 12, this is our next move, our next stop on this list, right? I'm going to glance at Conference USA for a second, but next stop on this list, Big 12. So we're getting closer and closer to the PAC and Mountain West situation. But this is a big one right here, the Big 12. Look at Conference USA real quick. The fact that when you click on history, the history instantly goes into 05-06 realignment, 13-14 realignment, 14-15 realignment, 14 through 21 realignment, the 2020s realignment. Conference USA has essentially become the landing spot for young up-and-coming FBS programs. We're going to look up at one point, and you're going to maybe have a few long-term FBS teams, and other than that, it's going to be full of programs who just made the jump to the FBS within the last maybe 15 or so years. So it's a relatively young conference when you look at the membership. And there's nothing wrong with that. I have no issue with Conference USA. Like I said, the NIU was in the MAC. Shit, when you really think about it, Conference USA, Sunbelt, and the MAC, we're the lowest three. Let's just be honest. That's where we were. But you can see that the Conference USA, what happened to Conference USA after the Big East got dipped into? Well, guess what? The Big East went to Conference USA and added some schools, right? And then surprisingly enough, here's the crazy part. Surprisingly enough, Conference USA losing schools, right? Cincinnati, Louisville, and South Florida, they were still able to bring in schools. So they got UCF and Marshall from the MAC, Rice, SMU, and Tulsa, and UTEP from the WAC. So it's like Conference USA. I remember Conference USA being a pretty decent conference, right? It wasn't just a pushover conference. No, they were decent. I remember this, right? Once again, what then happens? The AAC loses more schools, if I remember correctly, because I'm pretty sure this 2013-2014 realignment for the AAC, right? They're adding schools. What was that 20? Like I said, 2013-2014. Where is it at? Right? They're adding. You're directly affecting Conference USA. I mean, at that point, like I said, 05-06 was the Big East. Now it's the AAC. So the Big East / AAC has to replace the schools that they lost to the Big Ten, to the ACC, and I want to say Big 12. Yeah, they now have to replace the schools they lost. right? So Conference USA loses Houston, Memphis, SMU, UCF, right? They're just getting hit up every 3 seconds, right? They really are. I want to say you then actually had um, more movement. Tulane, ECU, right? When I say the American just straight up kept going back to the well, and I guess it's because that's the only place they could go. But in reality, it's like, I mean, why couldn't the American dip into the Sun Belt at all? Right? The American didn't dip into the MAC. They just kept going back to the Conference USA. And I'm like, yo, I've never seen a conference. I mean, the Conference USA might as well be the minor leagues for the AAC, if we're being honest. Conference USA might as well be the minor league affiliate of the American Athletic Conference. And maybe that's the funny part. I mean, for all I know, maybe I need to go look up something and be like, oh no, there is a relationship between Conference USA and the AAC. It's actually kind of funny that you went from the Big East to the American Athletic Conference. So maybe there isn't a coincidence that this is the reason why we keep seeing the AAC pull from the Conference USA, right? Maybe I should have done a couple extra few minutes of you know fact finding and a deep dive into why the hell is it the AAC / Big East just keeps pulling from Conference USA. So once again, and then even up until today, right? Even more I'm like, yo, UAB from the Conference USA to the AAC, right? So it's like never ending. I would not be surprised if in the future again we see more schools leave the AAC, and then guess where the AAC is going to go? They're going to go to Conference USA. In Conference USA, at this point, what they're doing pretty effectively for the most part is, like I said, they're bringing in schools from the FCS. Now, I'm pretty sure this pisses off the power conferences a bit because it's like, yo, we don't want to keep having more schools join. We want to cap it where it's at. We have too many schools moving up to the FBS. But like I said, the Conference USA don't really have a choice. They don't have a choice. They can't really lure anybody from the Sun Belt or the MAC. They're just sadly getting picked off. So eventually, hopefully, Conference USA gets to the point where they can actually sit and breathe and build their conference and make some stuff happen and win some big time games but right now they may be considered the lowest on the bottom pole on the totem pole when it comes to FBS conferences. And that's just kind of what it is. Now, I'm not gonna open up a wiki link for the Big 12, but this is where you see things begin to really truly happen. This is where things are clearly a bit more modern day, right? This is after COVID. You get Texas and Oklahoma announcing their intent to leave the Big 12 and join the SEC. Now, these dates are important. That's July 27th, 2021. July 27th, 2021. Why the hell did Texas and Oklahoma leave the Big 12? Media rights deal. Simple as that. 99.9% of the time when you're seeing major universities, or at this point any university, moving around, a media rights deal is involved. That's what it is. It's a media rights deal. We want to make as much money as possible. We weren't able to get the deal that we wanted. So, yeah. We're gonna bounce. Right. We're gonna head out. And that's what it is. That's what it is. Yeah, that's just what it is. It's all money related type of stuff. It's money related type of stuff. But like I said, with Texas and Oklahoma announcing their intent to leave, and we know this is media rights deal related, Here's the thing that you have to pay close attention to. Remember, you have Texas and Oklahoma, essentially who you could say is the face of the Big 12, are leaving the Big 12. They're leaving the conference. Ask yourself this question, though. Did the Big 12 fall apart with the departure of those two teams? No, they did not. They did not fall apart with the departure of Texas and Oklahoma. September 10th, 2021, BYU to join the Big 12 Conference. Once again, we got July 27th, 2021, Texas and Oklahoma announced that they're leaving. So that's 2 days after my birthday in 2021. September 10th. I mean, that's not even a whole 2 months later. BYU is joining. And I don't think it was just BYU. I think you also had, and I don't know if it says in this article, but we also know, well, it actually does, it's right there. It's not just BYU, it was also UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston. So when you had Texas leave and Oklahoma leave, their thing was, okay, we're clearly losing the two biggest faces of our conference. We're losing the two of the biggest brands, right? But yeah, instead of us falling apart, we're gonna add 4 programs: UCF, Cincinnati, Houston, and BYU. Do those two make up for the loss? No, but we're better together than everybody falling apart, crumbling, splintering even more. This is important because, like I said, all of this went down in the same year, and then even then, Texas and Oklahoma essentially agreed to still play out the rest of existing agreements and yada yada yada. Now we do know that I want to say that they ended up leaving sooner than that, and there was a whole payout situation and yada yada yada. That's just how it goes down. But if there were 2 schools in that conference that had the money, it was those 2 schools. Like, I don't remember hearing anything about a lawsuit or any of that stuff. They just paid and left. I don't even think it was a situation of, oh well, they were just granted to leave. I think literally, I think they just paid it and bounced. So yeah. Now we get here, Pac-12. This is important. This right here, because it references right away, despite the alliance on June 30th. No, wait. Actually, no. It references it right here. The formation of this alliance. So they're talking about an alliance between the ACC, Big Ten, and Pac-12, like a scheduling alliance. We're going to schedule each other, we're going to play each other, right? We're already power conferences, but we want to keep things exciting, make things exciting. We're going to make sure our schools, are in competition with each other. But the formation of this alliance between the Pac-12, ACC, and Big Ten was in response to Oklahoma and Texas announcing plans to leave the Big 12 and join the SEC. So literally, that was such a big time move of those two leaving the Big 12 and joining the SEC that at that point in time, it felt like the scales were being tilted. The power balance was unstable with the SEC. Right? Now, here's where things start happening. We're slowly but surely getting closer and closer to modern day what's going on. And some of this is just my speculation and thoughts on what I'm about to say. But now we have June 30th, 2022, UCLA and USC announced their departure from the Big Ten. Wait, hold on. Oh, departure for the Big Ten Conference, right? Huge. This one paragraph might be one of the most important paragraphs in all of this. I'm going to read the whole thing. Despite the alliance between the Pac-12, ACC, and Big Ten on June 30th, 2022, UCLA and USC announced their departure for the Big Ten Conference, beginning in the 2024-25 academic year. As a result of losing two of the conference's tentpole programs in the entirety of the Los Angeles television market, the conference's ongoing media rights, once again, ongoing media rights negotiations became much more complicated. ESPN reportedly had made an offer which the 10 remaining schools would receive around $30 million per year. This was rejected by member schools, who countered with a demand for $50 million per school per year. ESPN responded by walking away from the negotiating table. So if I remember correctly, the PAC 12 or PAC whatever at that point in time, they had a deal. Their media rights deal prior to this one, I want to say had been like a 12-year media rights deal. And you don't see that really happening much anymore. I think these conferences, they're doing shorter deals. They're like, we're not about to lock in long term unless you pay us a stupid amount of money. But the payout that they were getting by the time that, this media rights deal was going to expire, it was about 21, 22 million per school per year. So it was low 20s. It was low 20 something million per school per year going to those Pacific Athletic Conference schools. Now remember, right, they're clearly like, we need to negotiate this and make this happen. Like, you can see, like it says, that's 2022. Their contract expired, I believe, 24? Right? So you can see in 2022, they're at the negotiating table. Even, I'm pretty sure even before that, they're at the negotiating table trying to make something happen. They're trying to hold things together before everything falls apart. They're trying to get a new deal. Right? Like I said, the media rights deal they have or had, I believe, did not expire until 2024. This is 2 years prior, them trying to make something happen. So then once 2024 got here, that new contract kicks in, the pay goes up. But clearly, here's the wild part. This is with UCLA and USC clearly announcing, we're gonna be gone in 2024. The PAC still wanted $50 million. So I'm not even sure what that number was with USC and UCLA. They may have been asking for $60 million for all I know. $65 million, some number. But clearly, you just lost a top 3 media market. Yeah, we're not about to pay y'all that number. Nah, that's too much. 50 mil? I even heard, if I remember correctly, I even heard ESPN was even trying to meet somewhere even a little higher than 30 mil. I think it even ended up going a little bit higher than 30 mil. But they weren't doing 50 though. It was over with, right? I mention this because, like I said, this is the most important paragraph of this entire video. I think what somewhat begins to happen is somewhere around this time, losing USC and UCLA, you first potentially maybe hear of or see or any of those things that you for the first time may see these PAC teams that are left, if they just see what the Big 12 did with losing Texas and Oklahoma, it had to have been somewhere in their mind to be like, we have to replace them. This isn't optional. This is a must do. And that may have been the first time where the thought of snagging programs from the Mountain West came up. It had to have been. But, like I said, their thing also may have been, nah, we can sit at the 10. We have Oregon, because at that point in time, USC hadn't won a national title since like what 03, 04, something like that, right? USC wasn't the most dominant program in the conference, if we being honest. UCLA either, they weren't right. Oregon, Washington, yeah, I want to say Utah, even I want to say even Colorado at one point had. Well, actually, no, maybe not Colorado, but Utah, Oregon, Washington. I want to say those were the stronger schools, the higher performing schools in the conference at that point. So, right, if I click down here at football, let's look at football, and I wonder if it shows, because I want to see recent championships. I gotta probably click on something else to see that. But, or actually no, okay, we can look at it right here, man. No, wait, is this even football? No, that's basketball. All-time school records, no. Rivalry standings, divisions, bowl games. Let's pass over football standings. Champions. We'll go back to the second. Let's go to recent times. Like I said, 04 USC. Cal. What was this? Wait, were they tied in the? How did that one work? Because I'm pretty sure this is supposed to say who the champion was. So I don't know if they just split the championship or something weird. Right, we know USC hadn't won a national championship or anything like that. USC, Cal. So I guess they split it. USC and Arizona State. Okay, USC. So we're still. Oh, wait. And then is when you see the shift. I remember this. This is when you start seeing that shift. Right now you got Oregon. Okay, Oregon is balling for real. Right, Oregon. 2010, they make it to a national championship. Right, lose to Auburn. Right, Oregon again. We got Stanford. Right, Stanford again. We got Oregon. So now we're at the college football playoff stage, right? We got Oregon, but then they lose the national championship. We got Stanford, Washington, USC. 2017 is the last time USC was popping like that. Washington, Oregon, Utah. That's the reason why these two right here are the reason why everybody thought when Utah joined I want to say when Utah joined the Big 12 that Utah was just going to run the table because well Utah is just now they're legit. So Utah in 2021, 2022, and then the last one, Washington. We all remember watching this. Michigan beat them in the national title game. But USC's kind of run of dominance ended in 08. Right? It ended in 08. But still, it's USC. It's USC. Or let me just go back. It's USC and UCLA. USC's legendary. That's just what it is. USC is USC. UCLA is UCLA. Are they as much of a name brand as USC? Not necessarily, but UCLA, when it comes to basketball, right? I consider UCLA a powerhouse, hands down. And then with USC, you kind of get both. With basketball, powerhouse, but then also with football, it's like USC and Notre Dame literally balance each other. It's like every year you're like Notre Dame, this is gonna be their year, and then they end up being trash. USC, we rebuilt, we're retooled, we're gonna be back on top, and then now they're trash, right? Those are two schools that it don't matter. Every year you're expecting something good out of them, right? This year has been a great year for Notre Dame, right? And I'm an NIU fan. I need Notre Dame to win it all because as an NIU fan, I'm gonna be over the moon, right? I need Notre Dame to win it all. But anyways, like we said, most important paragraph in this whole thing. Like I said, I think 2022 summer 2022, may be the first time you had those talks. And then lo and behold, we can confirm that. Reports began circulating that Commissioner Klyavkov, I'm assuming that's how you say his name, Klyavkov? Yeah, Commissioner Klyavkov had been to San Diego State and SMU campuses for tours. This was allegedly part of the conference's vetting process for expansion. San Diego State sent the Mountain West Conference a letter notifying it of the school's impending departure. The Pac-12, however, was adamant about securing a media rights deal before expanding, without an incoming offer before a June 30th, 2023 deadline. San Diego State had to rescind its notice of intention to leave the Mountain West. So that's wild. That's wild. That's wild. San Diego State was ready and willing to bounce, but didn't happen. Like I said, we're in 2023 now, right? So 2022, summer 2022, UCLA, USC said they're gone, right? We're summer 2023. We're still summer 2023. At the start of Pac-12 Media Days on July 21st, 2023, the commissioner was asked about the status of the media rights deal and conference expansion, deflecting most questions on the matter. Having heard enough, Colorado President Rick George left media days early to return to Boulder. Less than a week later, on July 27, 2023, Colorado announced it would return to the Big 12 as of the 24-25 school year. So, once again, this is the beginning of the end. So really, Colorado bouncing kind of was the beginning. Actually, no, that wasn't the beginning of the end. That was not. I don't consider that the death penalty or the nail in the coffin or any of those things. Right? Colorado had just, they came to the PAC. Now they're leaving the PAC. Colorado was okay in the PAC. Actually, not really. I don't think Colorado even did much in the PAC, right? So whatever, it kind of almost turned into a whole good riddance, sayonara, see you later, right? Type of situation. Colorado bounces. It's like whatever. You're losing Colorado, you know. Colorado didn't do a whole lot. You're now down to 9 schools, right? So we already know. Keep this in mind. We already know the PAC did look at the Mountain West. Right, we have San Diego State right here as proof. And then they even looked at SMU. So the PAC was trying to be like the Big 12 and make some moves happen, but not having that media rights deal, some foreshadowing, not having that media rights deal was a big deal. They needed it in place. We need it in place. Let's make this happen before we make some moves. Let's do this before it's too late. Right? Colorado's gone. The biggest blow when the PAC was basically dead now at this point, you have right here. The 9 remaining Pac-12 members then demanded an update on the negotiations, including numbers on expected payouts. The commissioner came back with a deal from Apple TV Plus streaming service that paid member institutions in the low to mid 20 million range. So basically nothing above what they already were getting. Now, yeah, they're done. Albeit with escalators for meeting subscriber quotas. Now that was the other part, right? They get this Apple Plus TV deal. This would be the automatic payout, I want to say, like low to mid 20 mil. But if those subscription numbers skyrocket, and Apple can access that data, right? They can be like, well, here's all these news, right? Let's say everything went through, and the PAC was still the PAC, right? They would have literally been able to look at this information and be like, okay, here's our number of new subscribers in the past year, and here's how many of those subscribers, new and old, are watching these football games. And then that would have given them additional monies. But like I said, it was based on that. That was the incentive, I guess you can say. Those were the escalators. August 4th, here is the beginning of the end of the Pacific Athletic Conference. August 4th, 2023, Oregon and Washington announced they would be following UCLA and USC to the Big Ten. So essentially, from 2022, a year later, you now have Oregon and Washington gone. And at that point, you're like, we have now lost the remaining two best programs that we basically had, if we're being honest. Like, they're gone. Yeah, everybody else, it's time to jump ship. When that happens, you literally see, and it's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy how quick all this stuff happened. Same day. I actually feel kind of bad, a little bad. The same day, that's when you get Arizona, Arizona State, in Utah joining the Big 12 as well. Cal and Stanford about a month later, which to me was always like weird as all heck. Like, they end up in the ACC, and then SMU also ends up in the ACC. So it's just kind of crazy to me. Like I would have you would have thought Stanford would at least maybe had been one of the Big Ten editions, right? Or maybe even a Big 12 would, like, I don't know. I mean, I guess Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah, geographically, regionally, whatever you want to say, are essentially a better fit in the Big 12. But the way everything is playing out right now, it don't matter where you are. But like I said, Cal and Stanford, right? If you got Cal, Stanford, Oregon State, and Washington State left, yeah. And I had to pick two, yeah. Stanford and UC Berkeley, welcome to the gang, right? I'm just being honest. Just being honest. Literally, literally, the PAC was toast. You're now down to the PAC 2. You're down to the PAC 2. There's a grace period until 2026 for the PAC. If they're going to rebuild, they have until 2026 to make it happen. Now we're essentially, for the most part, modern day, right? We got December 5th, 2023. This is where the snake behavior begins. It was this sentence don't go deep into things, but it goes into some things. Right? It don't go deep into things, but it goes into some things. Oregon State and Washington State announced that they had entered into a football alliance with the Mountain West Conference for the 2024 season. With the alliance, both programs will play 3 home games and 3 away games against Mountain West opponents. Now, this has happened, right? This is history. Records are there, right? This has all happened. The WCC, so West Coast Conference, has invited both schools to join as affiliate members for basketball and most other non-football sports. Both partnerships are expected to last from the fall of 24 to the spring of 26. Washington State will also participate in the Mountain West for baseball, but Oregon State, a 3-time College World Series champion, will become a baseball independent. Good for them, right? So that's the sport that, Oregon State is solid at. They got baseball. Here we go. After the 10 schools departed, the conference continued using the Pac-12 name and branding for at least the 24-25 academic year. Oregon State and Washington State were nicknamed the Pac-2 by media outlets, to the point that a game between the two teams during the 23 football season was jokingly dubbed the Pac-2 championship game by fans. Now we have the lawsuit that pops off, which is, yeah, and that's a fair lawsuit. The rest of you left, so Oregon State and Washington State should have control of the conference. Everybody else left, or at least you announced you were leaving, so you all should no longer have anything to do with how this conference will run. I understand that. I get that and I agree with that. I get it and I agree with it. Now here's the funny part. Here's the funny part. We don't then go into any really of the new schools that are joining, right? We're not gonna we're not gonna write anything about, the Mountain West schools that we kind of dipped into and started snatching up about this whole, right? Because that should be present. That should be the next paragraph of stuff under here. But the funny part is they literally have all those schools listed. San Diego State, Colorado State, Fresno, Boise, Utah, Gonzaga. They got these schools listed. But we don't get any sort of paragraph, article, write up about the stuff that's gone down up to this point. Because 2024, you get multiple announcements. Boise State, San Diego State, Fresno State, Colorado State have agreed to join the PAC. Where's the announcement stuff at? Right? Okay, we got a future members on September 12th, yada yada yada. This should be down here. If I'm being honest, if I'm going with the history section, this should be down here. If I'm being straight up, this, like I said, is what I believe happened. I think back here, this right here, I think back here is when you really had the PAC looking at quite a few Mountain West schools, not just San Diego State. I think they were looking at a few Mountain West programs. I think Boise was in that mix. I think Fresno was in that mix. UNLV were in those talks. But they chose San Diego State as the one that they were like, okay, if we got to choose a program out of all these programs, which one helps the media rights deal the most? And that's why San Diego State was the move. You would think, oh, what about Boise? Boise's the most successful. Boise is not in a strong media market. At the end of the day, like, this is proof right here that as successful as Boise is, San Diego State has a leg up on them. Because San Diego State, you get a media market, it's a California school, right? They've been pretty decent over these years. San Diego State was basically in the PAC. They were there. And then they weren't. Right? SMU also media market, strong program for the most part, right? Good football, right? SMU, we got the money. We're ready to move. We want to make the move up to a power conference. We're ready to go. SMU, you're now in Texas. PAC has never, not that I know of, not that I remember, PAC having any sort of footprint or anything in Texas. So why not? At this point, we might as well. But I think right here, from summer 2022 to summer 2023, you had talks. There were talks of Boise, maybe UNLV, Fresno, San Diego State, right? All those schools, you cannot tell me there was not a list of schools. It was not just, oh, San Diego State and SMU. No, they went through a list. There was a list for sure. I'm pretty sure maybe even UTSA was on that list, right? You had schools that were on that list. Memphis might have been on that list, right? You had schools that were on that list. But the best two at that point in time, San Diego State, SMU. If I have Boise State play San Diego State 10 times, yes, Boise State is probably winning 10 times. But media rights deal wise, San Diego State is blowing Boise State out of the water. Even alumni base, I'm pretty sure San Diego State has the leg up academically. I would not be surprised if San Diego State has the leg up. And then SMU is SMU. SMU out of both of those schools, I'm giving SMU the edge. Right? SMU was definitely ready for the most part to move up to a power conference. We just saw what SMU did in the ACC. Right? So SMU was ready to go. They were ready to go. Once Oregon State, and this is what I truly believe went down, once Oregon State and Washington State got the reins of the conference, and even though they had essentially the Mountain West willing to work with them, right? That's what this sentence says here. We now know what went down. And what went down, in my eyes, goes all the way back to here. It goes back to here. It goes back to here. Now, the only difference was, okay, well, the ACC had 9 schools. And the Big East had its schools. It wasn't a situation of, well, that conference got 2 schools and they're trying to rebuild. They're trying to do... No. The ACC, for the most part, had all they needed. They just wanted to become more powerful. You get what I'm saying? So let's dig into the Big East. That was the goal. Let's dig into the Big East. We have more money, so we can cannibalize them. We can snag from them. And then it just continued on. Big East for football becomes essentially the AAC, and then you see the AAC getting picked apart every X, Y, Z, and then it leads down to the Conference USA. Conference USA getting picked apart every few years. So when the commissioner is meeting with Oregon State and Washington State and is like, well, the entire conference has abandoned you all. It would be extremely difficult on the fly, I guess, to now throw a schedule together. Okay, we get it, because remember, Oregon State, Washington State, things were said, right? They did not want to just abandon the PAC. They did not want to let over 100 years of history just fade away. AKA, we are not willing to merge our conference with the lowly Mountain West. We're not willing to do that. We would rather keep the PAC the PAC. Mountain West commissioner, seeing how things have gone down, you're just 2 schools. You're just Oregon State and Washington State. You're not a conference of 7 or 8 and you just need a school or 2. It's just 2 of you who have literally been thrown to the side. Nobody wanted you to. But still, just to be safe, just to be for real with you, we are willing to work with you. We're even willing to merge. And that's a key difference. That's a key difference. It was not Mountain West is extending an invite to Oregon State and Washington State. I'm pretty sure that may have happened at some point where they did. But a lot of it began pointing to a merger where it could have become the Pacific Mountain Conference. It could have become I don't know, the Pacific West Conference. I don't know what it may have turned into. But a merger, we will bring you two in, right? You don't just have to abandon all of the history of the conference, right? This conference is still alive, right? We already have 12 schools. We will now be 14. If you feel like we need to bring in two more to bolster our strength, we can do that. But apparently that was shot down. So, like I said, Mountain West Commissioner, I would have done the same, hands down, if I'm looking at what's happened from the Big East down to Conference USA. I'm going to protect my brand and my school and my conference any way possible. Yes, I'm going to be like, I can't forbid you, I can't stop you from talking to Mountain West teams, but I will, our lawyer, we're going to write up a contract, and your lawyer is going to look at it, and either you agree to sign or not, right? You agree to sign or not a essentially a tampering clause, right? You all will have to pay a hefty price if our schools, who are aware of this, if our schools get an offer to join the PAC, that is a poaching penalty. Because we're being straight up aware with you all. We're being straight up with y'all. We're willing to work you all into our conference schedule, and you all have a whole full, right? We're willing to do that to help you all out. But that does not mean you just get to come in and pick schools off. Like I said, it's just you two. We got a whole 12. We're stable. We're good. But that is what the PAC decided to do anyway. There is no way possible that you end up all of a sudden having Boise, Fresno, San Diego State, and Colorado State all basically at the same exact time be like, we are joining the Pacific Athletic Conference without having talks with them all four. What the PAC did is absolutely no different than right here. It's no different. Miami, Syracuse, and Boston College were rumored to be the three schools under consideration, and all three met with officials from the ACC regarding membership. At the same time, the Big East itself was contemplating its future. So they were trying to figure things out, and then within that same time, here you got Miami, Syracuse, and BC are getting poached, essentially. And then lawsuits popped off because it's like Miami, Syracuse, and Boston College, you all know what we're trying to do. You're at the meetings, and then y'all are off to the side over here meeting with the Atlantic Coast Conference. Like, yeah. So there should be no shock that at least Commissioner Navarez was like, yo, PAC 2, we understand that you're in a shitty situation, but, right, if you don't learn from history, it repeats itself. That's how I look at it. If you don't learn from history, it repeats itself. So now you have this lawsuit, right? When it comes to the exit fees from those schools, those should be paid, hands down. But they're trying to be petty and sue and be like, we shouldn't have to pay those, or we should only have to pay less. They need to just pay the exit fees. I don't even know why those five are doing that. But when it comes to the poaching penalty, you have one side of history that's either going to end up being, nope, this is perfectly fine. A conference can come do this and they can take all your schools away and put you in a messed up situation. Or B, we are going to rewrite history. Well, not rewrite history, but we're going to go a new direction with things. We're going to go a new direction. And in agreements from situations like this, well, guess what? It is perfectly fine and fair to add a poaching fee. You were willing to come to us and work out this scheduling agreement, but it was a big issue with the word that's being thrown out there right now by the PAC and their fan base and yada yada yada, and we're gonna win this lawsuit. The PAC was under duress. They had no choice. They were under duress. So you're talking about the same Pacific Athletic Conference that on September 8th, 2023, the Pac-2, Oregon State and Washington State, those same two who filed a lawsuit against the Pac-12 commissioner to take control of the conference, right? Those two bodies and their lawyers are they were now they couldn't, we were in duress. We were under duress. Everything fell apart around us, right? We had no choice. No. You have, and here's my thing. Think about it like this. You got USC, Washington, UCLA, and Oregon are all now playing in the Big Ten, right? We're going from the West Coast to essentially the Midwest/East. You got Stanford and Cal literally going from the West Coast to the East Coast for the most part, and then you got SMU thrown in there. Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah, they're the only ones who geographically ended up in a spot that made sense, right? So they don't have to go super far, at least. But here's my counter argument to the whole, we were under duress, yada, yada, yada. Did the Pac-2 have to come to a scheduling agreement with just the Mountain West? Could they not come to a scheduling agreement maybe with the Big Ten? Maybe with the Big 12? Maybe with the ACC? Right? You want to say no because it's like, well, if they can come to a scheduling agreement, how come they couldn't just add them as members? Because they didn't want to add them as members. They don't necessarily see the value in adding them as members. But you know what? We will work you into the schedule. It doesn't hurt. Now, like I said, those were 3 other power conferences that could have potentially added those 2 schools, maybe, and didn't. Okay, so maybe those 3 are unrealistic. Could the PAC have worked the Pac-2 Oregon? Remember, Oregon State, Washington State, for football. Keep in mind, this is football only. Could those 2 then have worked a deal agreement, something with the American Athletic Conference to be a part of their schedule? Could they have? You have lawyers who there's no way their lawyers were like, you know what, yeah, we're perfectly fine with this agreement, the poaching penalties, yada yada, go ahead and sign. No. If their lawyers were like, nah, for what we're trying to do, what we want to go do moving forward, we need to rebuild the conference, don't sign this. Do not agree to this. No. The PAC had every intention to do what they were going to do. Like I said, I truly believe back here, from the moment USC and UCLA left, the PAC set out to begin looking for replacements. And that may have been just the two schools, it may have been four schools. Because, like I said, we saw Texas and Oklahoma leave, and then four schools join the Big 12. You weren't, I don't think you were just going to replace USC and UCLA with San Diego State and SMU and everything was going to be good. There was a list of schools that they were working their way through to see if we're going to invite them, good fit, yada, yada, yada. For all I know, media rights deal, had that been figured out, you end up with San Diego State and SMU joining, and then maybe potentially you do end up with two more programs joining. I think that's how it would have gone down. That's how I envision it going down. I really do. The PAC knew what they wanted to do from the get-go, or else you don't sign something saying if you poach our schools, you need to pay us. No, it was we're going to poach your schools, and due to our circumstance, we're going to go through the legal system and beat that. So we're going to sign it anyway. That's what the PAC did. That's what they're doing right now. We're going to go through the legal system to fight this because it's unjust, it's unfair. We were under duress. We had no choice. If I am a damn Mountain West Conference lawyer, my thing is this. At the end of the day, did the PAC have to, repeat, did they have to come to an agreement with the Mountain West? Was the AAC an option? I need all the truth to come out. I need communication to come out. Did the PAC-2 communicate at all with the AAC about potentially some sort of scheduling agreement? I don't think they did, because they were just like, well, it benefits us and you for the most part, right? Regionally, geographically, it's a fit. It doesn't make sense, right? Why even waste our time communicating with the AAC? The AAC has a nice handful of central time zone schools, right? They got 3 Texas schools, and you have Tulsa, and then you got Memphis, you got Tulane, right? So yes, I get it. Pacific Northwest is now having to travel to, right? Potentially, you might have a game where you got to go all the way to the East Coast, but then again, you might have a game where you just got to go to Texas or Oklahoma. I get why you would want to schedule something with the Mountain West. I get it. They're right there. For the most part, you could say the PAC was the big bro, the Mountain West was little bro. Right? I'm gonna work with little bro, and we gonna fix something. We gonna make it work. But the PAC's take of we had no choice, in that wording alone, it's like nah, calling BS on that one. Oregon State and Washington State are 2 schools. If we being honest and being straight up, they have enough money. They do. They have enough money that they could have made it through some situations. They could have. They could have made it through. Here's the funny part. Rose Bowl, which essentially you can contractually is aligned with the Pacific Athletic Conference specifically, right? And I know historically it's always been whoever wins the PAC championship will play the Big Ten champion in the Rose Bowl, right? Give or take, you having either of those teams end up being in the national championship, right? They'll play in the Rose Bowl. But the Rose Bowl itself is contractually aligned with the Pacific Athletic Conference. And I want to say the payout from that's like a $50 million deal. So, funny enough, well, guess what? Oregon State and Washington State, they get a $25 million check each. There's money. They're, Oregon State, Washington State are not cash strapped like that. They're not. They're not. They really aren't. They're trying to sue purely out of pettiness. But if I'm on a jury and I know history, I'm really looking at the Mountain West and I'm like, I get it. We have seen these conferences tear smaller conferences apart. They think the bigger conferences think they can just do whatever they want to do. And then they do it and they keep doing it and they keep getting away with it. So, your commissioner and lawyers were like, let's put a pause to that. Because they knew we're inviting you all in. Y'all don't want to merge, right? That's not an option for y'all. Okay, we can't just let y'all, because we see what you're trying to do. We can't just let you tear us apart. That's nah. So, like I said, it would have been easy to me to the talking point. Like I said, you want to say you were under duress and you had to sign with the Mountain West. Did you make an attempt at all to communicate with another conference for that scheduling? Did you? Did you? Oregon State and Washington State could have had a scheduling agreement with literally any conference they wanted easily, except for a power conference, even power conference, because Oregon State and Washington State, I'm sure they knew, right? There's a war chest, right? So the PAC has money. It had money. It's not like all the money in the PAC just disappeared, right? That was the whole point of them suing the PAC commissioner to give over the conference to those two. So they have the war chest, and then you're adding to the war chest with the Rose Bowl. So you're sitting on money. You know you have money. You're still going to have your home football games now, thanks to the Mountain West. Right? Yes, you don't have a media rights deal, so you're not going to get a $20+ million check at the end of the season. But they do have some sort of deal because, well, guess what? The Mountain West is partners with the CW. So they're getting something. It ain't power conference money, but they're getting something. The CW is also partnered with the ACC. So, like I said, the PAC is getting something. Their games were televised. They were watchable. They were viewable. Let's not act like, nobody could watch Oregon State and Washington State this year. That's not the case. You still were making money from fans showing up to the game, so y'all are getting paid, right, for home attendance. If you know, as the Pacific Athletic Conference, you got $50 million coming in at the end of the year due to the Rose Bowl, you telling me that the Mountain West Conference putting in a tampering, poaching penalty fine against you in a contract, you telling me you couldn't say no and then move on to the next? Move on to the next. Mac, can you work us into y'all schedule? We know it'll be weird as all hell, but whatever. AAC, can you work us into your schedule? We know it'd be kind of like, but it's whatever. We can do it. You got $50 million that you knew was coming in at the end of the year. I would have even gone as far to be like, okay, we will cover the travel cost for the teams that have to fly out to play us. We will cover the travel cost as a thank you to helping us be able to have a damn season, right? The Mountain West was protecting their conference. And because y'all don't like that they were doing that, you're now under duress. And the wild part is, you still went along with your plan anyway, and you got essentially the five best teams from the Mountain West you could get. You didn't even get all the teams you wanted because you wanted UNLV, right? Potentially, I believe they wanted Air Force maybe, right? I think they maybe wanted Hawaii, but they for sure wanted UNLV, and they didn't get UNLV, right? They wanted some of these AAC schools. They wanted Memphis, Tulane potentially, right? They even tried to get UConn, right? UConn come join us as a football only member. No, y'all don't want them as football only. I know what you're up to, right? You get them to join football only now, but basketball definitely down the line would have been in the mix. Because guess what? You got Gonzaga. Funny part, where was Gonzaga? Oh, the West Coast Conference. Somebody who you made an agreement with for basketball and other sports. So clearly, PAC, y'all have zero issue poaching. Right? You literally took five schools from the Mountain West and you took one of the best basketball teams in the country from the West Coast Conference. And even today, most people think y'all are going to take another school from the West Coast Conference just to bolster the basketball side of things even more. The PAC deserves no remorse. They deserve, right? Like if they win this lawsuit, this is just rigged. Nothing will ever be fixed. Nothing will ever be able to be resolved. You're just going to allow stuff to just keep happening. All you have to do is make the right judgment. Make them pay what they owe. We told you not to do it. You still signed it anyway, and then now you want to turn around and be like, we had no choice. You had a choice. It's just your two schools. It is a lot easier to accommodate your two schools than you think. Could have gone to any other conference and been like, please, for the love of everything and anything, can you work us into your schedule? We will cover the travel costs for the schools that have to come out and play us. We will cover the travel cost for the schools that have to come out and play us. We'll cover it. We'll make it happen. We will cover it. We will make it happen. That could have been shopped to the Sun Belt, Conference USA, MAC, AAC, and Mountain West Conference. Like I said, I think they just went to the Mountain West Conference because they had their plan from the get-go. Well, if we're going to retool our conference, here's where we're going to steal all the teams from. So that's what we're going to do. The funniest part is this. Let's say they had actually communicated with multiple other conferences about trying to make something happen. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they did. Maybe they did communicate with multiple other conferences to try to work out something with their schedule for Oregon State and Washington State. Maybe they did. But like I said, I doubt it. If they had done that, and let's say the AAC obliges them, right? And let's say the AAC is just like, whatever, is two West Coast schools, we're working them in. This is decent, right? They're paying, because if I remember correctly, they were paying the Mountain West. It wasn't even just a situation of work us into our schedule. They were actually paying the Mountain West to work them in there. So there was a transaction. This wasn't just for free, right? They were paying to be added into the schedule. Right? They're paying to be added into the schedule. They're covering transportation, yada yada yada. let's say they work that agreement with the AAC. Technically, they now have dang near free reign to kind of go after those Mountain West schools and rebuild. Because guess what? The Mountain West, I don't think they would have been as quick to work in a poaching fee. Maybe, just maybe, right, somebody does have the foresight to be like, okay, the PAC isn't dissolving. They are trying to rebuild their conference, right? We need to get our governing body together and maybe we vote on something. Either we vote that we institute a poaching fee or we vote not to. But the likelihood, like I said, the odds would have been higher for the PAC to be able to then recruit those to recruit those Mountain West schools. But like I said, they had a plan from the get go. Join the Mountain West for football, and we're going to Trojan horse them. We're going to meet with these schools, and then we're going to invite them. That's what happened. It's that simple. It's that simple. So, like I said, yeah, the PAC, no sympathy, no empathy, no nothing. The way they're moving is messed up, and hopefully in court, like people are like, yeah, duress. Y'all weren't under duress. You knew what you were doing, right? You knew what you were doing. You knew what your plan was from the get go, and things have not panned out the way you wanted them to. It's that simple. Peace.